Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Transcend with M. And I am super excited because we have our guest Tess here with us, my half amazing Puerto Rican woman. And we're going to talk about a lot of things that are important, not just for entrepreneur, for women, but for your financial health. All right. So welcome, Tess, to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to be here. Excited that I made it after my recent accident.
I know, if you guys can see, we have here a beautiful boot. But she's all set. She's okay. She's only going to surgery in 2 days, right?
It's going to be just fine. Yeah.
We got to do what we got to do. And
Exactly.
It's amazing that you're here today because, I mean, if it was me, I would be in bed wanting everybody to, serve me. So
I wouldn't miss it. I love hanging out with you. Honestly, I was so excited to see you that I was like, I'm going to make it work. I love hanging out with you. I love chatting with you. So I'm glad to be here.
I really appreciate you making it today. So let's just start with your story. I think you have a pretty amazing story. Most people don't know, but you were a professional athlete and, rolled into the financial world. So tell us a little bit about your story. I think our listeners will be impressed with the level that you were able to get to from the athletic standpoint and now, applying all that discipline into the financial realm. So tell us your story.
Sure. And I like sharing my story because I think a lot of people feel like they have to pick a destination and pick a career and stay there.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for athletics, I don't think I'd be a financial coach today. I don't think I would have a financial education business. So your story can end up in ways you didn't expect. So where mine starts is I was an athlete for a long time. I was a springboard diver, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me, not just to compete, but also, honestly, to allow me to go to college. My mother was definitely not going to pay for college, so she said, you can get a scholarship or figure it out. And so thankfully, I was good enough to get a scholarship. I graduated in 2009, which for those of you that are millennials or elder millennials like me, that was a terrible time to graduate and find a job. And so I ended up with a strange job of being a acrobat, like a circus performer on a cruise ship. And at this point, you're probably thinking, how do you own a financial education business from being a circus performer? And the one thread that's really important to my story is that I was always afraid of money. I grew up super afraid of not having enough. I heard it from my mother all the time. We don't have enough money to pay for that. And, looking back, we were middle class. We were fine. And I had a lot of privilege just to even be able to do sports, to get a scholarship. That's privilege, right? So I have to acknowledge that right off the bat. But I think that mindset made me realize, especially as a child of many divorces as well, that I was the only one that could take care of myself financially and that it was really up to me. So that circus performer job on cruise ships actually allowed me to save a bunch of money. And I knew enough to know that I wanted to invest it. I knew that investing was important, but I didn't know how to do that. It seemed super overwhelming. It seemed like something only wealthy, famous people do, and that it wasn't accessible to the average person. So I did what I thought was the right choice, which was to hire a financial advisor, a fiduciary, somebody that has a legal obligation to act in your best interest. And somebody I knew, somebody I trusted, I gave them all my money and just kind of looked the other direction for years. And at this time, I also started to get into real estate investing and some other things. And the long story short is after several years, I started to realize that the returns on my money wasn't that great. And after looking into it, I unfortunately discovered a lot of things that this financial advisor was doing on my behalf that weren't great. I had multiple investments that were very high fee. I was getting charged additional fees for financial products that weren't suited for me, that were suited for women in their late 50s. And I was, 27 at the time. And so I lost thousands of dollars of the really hard-earned money that I had worked so hard to invest and tried to do the right thing. And I was really devastated. And I had a lot of shame because I was so focused on doing the right thing. So after that, I learned everything I could about investing. I talked to everybody. I read every book. I would ask millionaires how they invested very directly, very boldly. And what I learned was investing is not that complicated, and we've been sold this lie that it's only for super special snowflakes that have access to these things, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So now I love to help women understand that, one, if you are an entrepreneur, by the way, you are doing something already way harder than investing.
Yeah, that is
so you are so capable of learning how to invest. It just feels very complex because of the jargon and the myths that we've been told about investing and the lack of education. And so there's so many reasons why so many women feel intimidated when it comes to investing. And that's why I love what I do, because it doesn't take that long to work with somebody that has no idea what investing is. In a couple weeks, in a couple months, they can be investing in their own accounts with confidence and knowing that the money that they're working so hard for every week is working hard for them.
Yeah, and I want to dissect a couple things of what you just mentioned. And I think for me, the loudest part of all of these is being afraid of money. I think coming from, I'm Puerto Rican, Hispanic culture, you can't have too much because then you're greedy, right? If you don't have enough, then you're poor. You can't really help anybody. But you can't really talk about it either, because then, it's like taboo. So it is very, very clear that us, Latin America, Central America, we are very far behind when it comes to financial education. A lot of people is, right? And that fear of talking about money, even thinking about making more money, it's something that prevents a lot of people from hitting that wealth gap, right? Hitting that financial stability that they look for, because our circuits in our brain said you can't have too much, you have to spend it, because then you don't fit within the family values, right? And you can not really say that you want more money, because if you're not an entrepreneur and you have a job, you probably will lose your job. That's basically the bottom line of what every single person thinks about from our community, right? Unless you have gone through that education. So tell me a little bit, when you are talking to people, talking to women, talking to entrepreneurs, and anyone that comes through your desk, right? What are some of the myths that you have to break down for them that, it's like a big aha moment?
Sure. There are endless myths, and it starts really early too. You mentioned, cultural differences. That's a huge one.
Yeah.
One of the biggest myths is, I don't have enough money. I'm not smart enough to learn. I don't have enough time. It's selfish and greedy to want more money. That's a big one I hear a lot. Money doesn't buy happiness, which is actually a really interesting one.
It's not true, people.
It's not true. I think it's a really dangerous adage, actually, because it makes it okay to be like, oh, well, money doesn't buy happiness, so I'm not going to focus on that. When money might not buy happiness, but if we reframe money for what it is, and this is, by the way, part of the work I do with women in my financial coaching programs. To back up a bit, I started very tactically. Like, this is how you buy index funds, and this is how you save on taxes through retirement accounts. Yeah. And I had to back way up to focus more on the mindset around money.
Yes.
And that was one of the biggest learnings of my business.
100%.
Yeah. Once you start to dismantle the beliefs, it becomes pretty easy to learn about this stuff, because it's no longer intimidating to hear financial jargon and retract right away. And so one of the most interesting things that I think is the whole, like, money doesn't buy happiness, or it's selfish or greedy to want money. One of the first things I tell people is, let's reframe money as a tool. Mm-hmm. Money is a tool that can buy a lot of amazing things like security, safety, insurance, impact, the more time to spend on your business that is impacting other people. Time, freedom, flexibility, options to change your career, walk away from a toxic relationship, walk away from a toxic job, whatever it is. That's really the way we need to start reframing money as a tool. Money itself is not a bad thing, but it is a tool that can be used in so many wonderful ways.
If it's used correctly, it can definitely bring happiness to your life.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Surely there's diminishing returns, right? Like, once you're making millions and multi-millions, at some point there is such a thing as probably not much more fulfillment from the money you're making. But most of us don't have that problem, right? Money does make things easier. I mean, look at me. I'm sitting here right now with a ruptured Achilles, and but my Achilles is in like two pieces, for those of you that don't know what that means. And I'm very grateful that I have spent the time to make sure my finances are under control, not from just an investing perspective, but also from an emergency fund perspective, because this is going to set me back. I'm going to have, my business is going to suffer a little bit because I'm going to be in surgery. I'm not going to be able to do stuff. I'm going to probably spend a lot of money on the best surgeon in Boston to make sure this goes well. And those are things that I can do because I have money. And so I think understanding the impact of how your life can look different and how you can have security and safety and options when things get bad, because they will, that's really important. And another myth I hear people say is like, oh, well, I want to like enjoy my life now and YOLO and live my life. If something happens to you and you don't have the money to take care of it, you're not going to be able to enjoy your life. So there is a way to make money, invest it responsibly, and enjoy your life. You just have to allocate it specifically. Yeah.
The balance.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the process, right? Someone like me, let's pretend I don't know anything about finances. I'm struggling. Paycheck is not enough. I don't know if I can buy a house. I don't know if I can get that new car. I don't know if I can pay for groceries this month. It's a lot of people in that situation nowadays, especially with inflation and everything that is going on in the world right now. Here in Massachusetts, you don't work, you don't eat. That's the bottom line, right? And there is, unfortunate, a lot of people going through very, very hard times right now. So let's pretend I'm there and I need desperate help to get my shit together. How can you help me?
Yeah.
What is the process?
So the first thing on my end, when I work with clients that are in the phase of just getting their money organized before they can invest, the first thing is empathy and acknowledging the fact that we are dealing with a very challenging economy right now. Housing prices are through the roofs. Salaries haven't kept pace. If you're a business owner, you are being forced to raise your prices. Your cost of doing business is going up. So just generally speaking, I think, first of all, acknowledging that it is hard. And there are things in our current system that are broken and not meant for the average person. However, that doesn't mean that it's not our responsibility to do something about it, right? Like, it might not be your fault, but it is our responsibility, and we have to hold ourselves accountable to do what we can with what we have. So that's a tough balance, right? Because I do want to share empathy, but also at the end of the day, you can take steps to improve your situation. So first, believing that that's possible for you, that's really the most important piece. And I think that starts with education, like understanding what's available to you. So if you're somebody that's struggling paycheck to paycheck, my first question would be like, do you know where your money is going? Do you know how much money, what does your cash flow look like? Like, how much money comes in and how much goes out? And if you're looking at how much is going out, is it a problem of overspending, or are you just not making enough money? Which is a sad reality, right? Because we can only save so much money. Like, some people just aren't making enough. And in that case, it might be an income problem. So when I work with people, that's the first thing I want to understand is, the very first thing is, what are their assets and liabilities? Meaning, like, what do they own? Do they have any savings account? Do they have any investing accounts already? And a lot of people don't realize that they do, by the way, like especially a lot of entrepreneurs, they have old 401ks with, $5,000, $10,000 before they left their other job. And they don't think about that as an investing account, but that's your money. So the first thing I do is make sure people don't have money that they're missing from previous jobs. That's a big one. And then from there, like, assets and liabilities, what do you owe? And then understanding your cash flow. And then as far as like where your money goes after that, assuming that if there is an income issue, you've found a path forward to try to improve that, or if there's a spending challenge, then making adjustments there and identifying like what that is. Like, is it a lack of organization? For some people, overspending is just they don't have a system to organize and they don't really know how much they're making. For other people, it's a behavioral thing to cope. So there can be a lot of different reasons for that. But at that point, once you've started to figure that out, the steps to start actually investing become pretty clear. The first step is to always have an emergency fund. So God forbid you rupture your Achilles, you can pay for things and not have to come out of pocket. The second is paying off any high interest debt. And just to circle back to myths that we were talking about earlier, one of the biggest myths that people have is that you have to be completely debt-free to start investing or to buy a house. And none of that is true. You do have to get rid of high interest debt, like credit card debt, anything like that. But at that point, when you've paid off most of your high interest debt, that's stuff over 8%-ish, then you can start investing. Yeah. And the last thing I'll add is, especially with women I work with that come from Central America or Latin America, a lot of times they're actually doing pretty well financially in some ways, but a lack of education is hurting them. So for example, like they might be making a lot of money in their business or have investment accounts, but they have credit card debt and they don't understand that that credit card debt is actually eating away at their investing efforts. Yeah. So those are really the steps to sum it all up. It's really, first money mindset, like helping people believe that they are capable of making that change, identifying what that change looks like, and then following the steps to fund an emergency fund, pay off debt, and then eventually start investing.
Yeah. How long does it take for someone to kind of switch that mindset? Because utilizing the tools, you can start tomorrow.
Yeah.
But utilizing the tools and not changing your mindset is not going to get you anywhere. And I think that's really important for people to understand that it takes a shift up here in order to fix your I don't know if you put it under the mattress or your bank or whatever it is that you put your money. You have a little cashier. It doesn't matter. But, you can have a good cash flow there or organize yourself financially if this doesn't shift. So what is the transition? Like what do you see with your clients? Tell me a little bit about that timeline.
So I appreciate this question a lot because this gives me an opportunity to give my PSA, which is that when I work with women, most of the time somebody has had a medical emergency, recently gotten divorced, separated, job loss, changing. They're going through a transition. Most of the time it's, most transitions end up being positive, which is the nice thing about life. But a lot of transitions are very hard, riddled with grief, very emotional. And usually they are forced to focus on their finances because of that. Yeah. Divorce is a big one. Mm-hmm. And so to answer your question about how long it takes, it depends on where someone's at and what their motivation is. Mm-hmm. So I am constantly all over Instagram and sometimes TikTok when I find the app on my phone, although TikTok kind of freaks me out.
You can't do that right now. Unless it's like half body up.
But I am always telling people that you don't want to wait until that thing happens to start to focus on your money. And unfortunately, that's most of the time what happens is that someone has something bad happen to them and then they kind of don't have an option. Like they have to start taking control of their money and they have to shift their mindset for survival. Yeah. So for anyone listening to this or watching this that is feeling like some kind of itch to take control of your money, the single best piece of advice I can give anyone is to do it as soon as possible and to start educating yourself. And it doesn't have to be an overhaul. You don't have to become a real estate investor overnight or anything like that. But you do have to start taking steps to understand your financial situation as soon as you can, because you don't want to wait until it gets really tough. And it's really sad. Like I deal with a lot of people that they get an inheritance. They're dealing with the death of a family member and they're trying to figure out their money. And so what I will say is the mindset shift can take a lot. And unfortunately, usually it takes an event. And I'd like to change that, which is why I have my financial education business and why I've spent so much time sharing content that it's easier to get started and that now is the best time to start. And the sooner you start, the less you're going to pay for your retirement. And the urgency of taking control of the money that you work so hard to make every week cannot be understated. Yeah.
And I tell you, that is so true because in 2000 and, oh my God, I think it was 2014 or so. 2014, 2015, I went through a pretty rough time and I was not prepared. I was not prepared financially and I had to move out with my daughter. I had to figure it out on my own. I'm like, how am I going to pay a car? How I'm going to pay rent, feed my daughter, do all these things, no help, right? And that survivor mode made me think about even the smallest thing. Like, do I need that subscription? Do I need to actually spend money on this? Do I actually need to, let's say, buy coffee every day? I don't drink coffee, but that's just an example. There is a lot of things that you usually pass on for granted because it's like $10 here, $5 there, $20 a week. But when you put all that money together, you could be paying a car. You could be paying your insurance. You could be investing that money if it's $100 a week. $100 a week in investing can get you a big return in the future.
It's a lot.
It's better than zero.
If you consider if you invested, let's say 500 and you got the average return of the stock market at 10% and you just did 500 a month for like 30 years, you would be pretty close to $1 million just with, and I think that's a big myth too. If we're busting myths here, is the myth of, I only have like $50 a week or $100 a week or whatever, where like that can translate to hundreds of thousands in retirement if you're consistent over time.
Of course.
So it does make a difference to start as early as possible.
Of course.
Sure.
And I think it's important, like you mentioned way at the beginning, it's important to recognize your strengths and your weaknesses when it comes to money. I think it's just one of the biggest things you can do. Like, I had a shopaholic problem. I did. I needed to get like stilettos and dresses all the time for no reason. Now I can't promote any brands here, but like, I don't go shopping anymore. I was actually having a conversation this morning with Nikki on the way here that I haven't bought clothes in I don't know how long. I might buy one thing here and there if I want to go to the beach, or if I saw that cute thing. But it's not a necessity. It's something that I buy because I can. Yeah. But it doesn't take over my financial goal, right? Because my financial goal is already set for the month. Whatever is left over, I'm good.
Right.
But I will not sacrifice my financial goal for things that I can get later on or I don't actually need.
Yes, exactly. And you just touched on something that I should have mentioned earlier in the process, and I do this in my group coaching program, is in the beginning, the first thing we talk about is money mindset and try to identify limiting beliefs holding you back. The very second thing we do is set specific goals, because it's very hard to say, I'm not going to spend money on this thing, if you don't have another reason not to. But if you've decided, I want to have a comfortable retirement, I want to have enough money to invest more in my business, I want to have enough money to put my kids through college or start contributing to their accounts, then all of a sudden it becomes much easier to make that value-based spending decision and be like, oh, well, I don't need the dress or stilettos because I have this bigger goal. Right. But a lot of people don't set, we set like fitness goals. We talk a lot about like fitness goals and weight goals and business goals, but you should have personal finance goals too, 100%. And more than one.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I learned that, when I wanted to buy my second house, I was like, how am I going to get there? I didn't know. I was like single mom at that point, like handling what I could. I had a property. I rented the property. I was like, that one is paying on its own. Now I have to pay rent here, but I want to get my own. So how am I going to do that, right? And then I went and I was like, all right, let me educate myself. And then I learned that I could use, the money from the other property to buy that and make that investment, right? And same thing, like, a little bit here on the stock market, a little bit there, $20 here, $30 there. And instead of spending that money on other things, I started replacing what I use that money for. Because sometimes it's difficult to like just say, oh, I have this money available, and then you just want to go and freaking expend it. But what worked for me was that I replaced those expenses with financial goals. And that's started helping my mindset a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, if I spend $50 a week in coffee, I'm actually going to only spend 25% of that in coffee, and the other percentage, since I already expended, I'm going to put it in this account towards this stock or whatever.
Right.
So I think it's important, and it's important to work with people for that, because believe me, alone overnight, you cannot do it. It's not going to work. It's not going to work because we are creatures of habit. So we always fall back if we don't have someone holding us accountable.
100%.
And I think that's where you do a really great job, just holding people accountable to make sure that they achieve those financial goals and identifying what those financial goals are. The one thing I do tell people is that one thing we both are in the financial industry, and for me, one thing that my job, my industry, I've been blessed to learn, it's that nothing really matters unless you have everything insured. I own an insurance company, people. It is what it is. But from that standpoint, insuring your wealth is really important. Mm-hmm. I cannot tell you how many people I've had buying $1 million properties and, trying to get $100 policy because they want to self-insured. And that's very dangerous, because do you really want to reach on your own pocket after you have done all this work to spend money in something that could have cost you a lot less by just having insurance?
Yes.
Right? So, I appreciate the opportunity of working with clients that are willing to educate themselves and understand that insurance is here as a tool to protect your wealth, not as a tool of taking money, because that's a misconception that I fight with every single day. So how important is to have your money in your investments and your things insured?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I definitely see that area of where people try to cut corners on insurance and things like that when they're, going out and buying a brand new Range Rover.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's probably not the best place to cut corners is with insurance. It's always worth it. I will say, one thing I love about BRZ, and I'm a happy customer of BRZ, right? By the way, so if you need insurance, you should.
Thank you.
But what I will say is, it's so critical to understand that insurance is a tool, just like anything else, to help you protect your wealth. Once you've accumulated some, you need to have insurance to protect your wealth, especially if you're doing real estate investing or you have a business. And I do think it is a common misconception that it's an additional expense, but it really needs to not be thought that way, especially when you start making some really decent money in your business, or if you're just starting your business and you have anything you want to protect. When I started my business, I had already been investing in real estate, and I honestly was not fast enough to get insurance to make sure that I was protected. So I think that's all part of the financial puzzle. And with any of this, and the reason why my business has been so successful, I'm not a financial advisor, right? I'm a financial coach. I don't give people specific advice. I educate people on how to understand how to manage their own investments. And if they are going to work with an advisor, how to vet them to understand that they're working in their best interest, or what types of advisors are going to help them save money, but also give them value, right? So I really am coming at financial literacy from the education perspective. I don't manage anybody's wealth. So I do a lot of education. What is so important when you're looking for these other tangential financial areas like estate planning or insurance is that you work with somebody that will educate you. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think people don't understand how important insurance is. And that's what you guys do a great job of, right? Because when we talked about my business, it was these are the things that I think you need. Here's why. Here's how they work. Mm. I don't know that. I'm not an insurance person. But you educating me makes me feel comfortable with that. And so I think just for anyone listening to this that's I need a financial professional in accounting, insurance, or financial literacy, or any of that, if whoever you're working with isn't educating you, that's a red flag.
Yeah. And everybody needs an army around them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you are an expert at what you do. Let the others educate you on what you don't know or you're not an expert on. Like, I always say, you won't get anywhere alone, especially financially. It's extremely important. It's like having a business coach, right? Like, you can get here, but how are you going to break the ceiling from here to here? Can you do it on your own? Well, if you haven't been able to do it till now, that means that you need that education, right?
Totally.
So it's the same with our personal finances.
Yeah, and it's the accountability too.
Yeah.
Like it's funny. So one thing I do a lot in my business is I do a lot of free educational workshops. And at the end, usually someone will ask me about my programming and I'll share that I do like small group coaching and this and that. And somebody will ask me like, can I learn this on my own? And I'll say, yeah, you for sure can. Are you going to? Like, are you going to focus on your goals? Are you going to make sure that you have a curriculum that works? Like, the reason I know how to do this is because I had my aha moment that was very painful and I lost a lot of money. And now I've been doing it for 10 years and it's not rocket science. You're totally capable of learning. But personally, as a business owner, I would much rather pay someone to help me save time who knows what they're doing and to give me a framework to work through rather than to just spin my wheels. I mean, there's everything on Google.
And
right?
save money through the process.
Totally.
Because you're going to, you are avoiding all the mistakes.
Yes.
That, that
yes,
you
I
did,
have a video called Avoiding the 8 Investing Mistakes I Made. That's in my program. So.
Well, Tess, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. I especially appreciate you doing this for women, for Latinas, for all women in the world, because it's, I focus on the Latino community, but you work with, anyone in the community. And it is important to have that education in maybe someone watching this today will have that aha moment, right? That's all we count on, one person that we can help today. So I appreciate your time. Appreciate what you do. Keep shining. Good luck on the surgery.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm so glad I made it. I would have been sad to miss you. So I'm glad I was here.
And let's keep rocking it, people. So stay tuned and we'll be back soon.